Hello and welcome. This is Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World. I'm your host, Jim Phillips. It is through the application of ancient wisdom in our modern world that we gain a greater understanding and experience of the truth of who we are. Never has there been a time in the history of humanity when there was a greater need to understand this truth. And it is this truth that will set us free. Before I begin today's episode, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World podcast at sacredstoriesmedia.com, where you can also listen to inspirational messages from my Sacred Stories colleagues. Additionally, if you'd like more information on my message, my work, free downloads, and upcoming events, please go to my personal website at www.prosperitybydesign.com. And lastly, I'm excited to announce that my book, The Key to Life, is now available for pre-order at sacredstoriespublishing.com. The Key to Life will be released on April the 4th. Now let's get into today's episode. As I've mentioned in other podcasts and in my writings, I take early morning walks that I've come to be called being immersed in the silence of the dawn. It's a time for me of deep reflection and a time when I'm actually very connected to the divine. It is during these walks that I ask questions, or I might ask for guidance on something that I might be writing on or something I might be in the midst of experiencing. I was on the walk this particular morning during the time of the writing of The Key to Life. Things have been going fairly well with the writing. Information and ideas were flowing fairly well, but then I began to question why I thought I had something of value to say, why I thought that what I had to say would be of interest to other people. Who was I to think that someone would pay hard-earned money for my book? I mean, quite frankly, why would someone buy my book out of all of the books currently available that were in the market on the same topic or similar topics? The thing was, these questions weren't about the relevancy of what I wanted to share or the potential impact I thought it might have on other people in their lives. I honestly believe, and I still do, that the message in my book is not only relevant, but it's important to today's world. These questions were really more about why me? Why was I given the inspiration to share this message? As I walked, I asked out loud why I was having these thoughts. I believed in the message that I had to share, and yet these thoughts kept playing in my head that were preventing me from fully exploring and expressing what I had such a strong desire to express. It's during these walks when my mind is open and I'm really receptive to whatever guidance would find its way into my consciousness. Well, on this particular morning, I did that, and I became aware of a new thought that was playing in my head. And the message was, you wouldn't be inspired to do something if it wasn't intended to be. Now, I remember thinking, wow, that is really interesting. I wouldn't be inspired to do something if it wasn't intended to be. As I continued my walk home, this phrase kept playing in my mind like a mantra. I wouldn't be inspired to do something if it wasn't intended to be. As I got home, I started thinking about the word inspiration. I had an idea of what inspiration was. I think we all do. But it's one of those words that we understand what it is, but we probably can't quite put it into words. We can't explain it to somebody else. So really, what are inspirations? I've always thought of inspirations to be that inner encouragement, that desire or nudge to act on something that really wanted to be fully experienced or expressed. But what I found in doing my research is that inspiration is much more. To inspire is to breathe life into, to be the animating force behind or within that which desires to be expressed and ultimately experienced. Inspiration is a breathing of life into a desire of the soul. It is a bringing to one's awareness the deep, heartfelt longing for the object of the desire to be fully expressed and experienced. Now, some might say that an inspiration is like motivation. However, to me it differs in that motivation is a prompt to take action towards that which has been inspired, whereas inspiration is the actual giving of life to, the birthing of, or giving breath to, that which desires to be expressed and experienced. While I was contemplating inspiration, another thought found its way into my awareness, and this was, be responsible to your inspirations. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be responsible to your inspirations? Well, quite simply, it means to follow through on them, to honor them, to respect them, to allow their full expression. Keep in mind that an inspiration is our soul communicating to you or to us what it desires to experience in this lifetime. And inspiration is an integral part of living fully and completely in the knowledge of who we truly are. Our inspirations are the inner knowing and communication of what we are to experience in this life. Now, as I went through this process of researching inspiration, getting a better feel for what it meant, really feeling what it means to be inspired, and once I felt comfortable with the guidance I was given, you wouldn't be inspired to do something if it wasn't intended to be, I got back to my writing. And things went really well for a while, until they didn't. I got to the point where, again, it wasn't about the message I had to share and whether or not I felt that the message was a powerful message or a relevant message. It wasn't about that. Now what I started to think about was, now what? What do I do once the book has been written? What do I do, after it's finished and I have to market it and I have to get it out into the world, something that I've never done before? Well, I again went through the process of taking my morning walks. I was asking for guidance around these new thoughts I was having about what am I going to do once it's finished, the fear around all of that. Again, because I had not done this before. And then I received the balance of the original guidance. The balance was, if something is intended to be, then all for it to be will be provided. Well, what an aha this was. And it completed the original guidance. We would not be inspired to do something if it was not intended to be. And if it is intended to be, all for it to be will be provided. I just thought that was such a complete statement, and quite honestly, it took a burden off of my shoulders. I really felt now that I could continue with my writing. I wasn't so concerned with what was going to happen once the book was finished. See, what I gained from this second message was that if I followed my inspiration, in this case to write The Key to Life, then all that I needed to bring it into being would be provided. I was not alone on this project. What I realized, and quite honestly, I knew this, and I think we all know this, but it's not something that perhaps we hold top of mind. And that was that there was and is an unseen mentor and support cast that's always available to us throughout the entire process we go through. In fact, it's with any inspiration that we have. The same invisible mentor and support cast would be available to me or to you to bring whatever I or you have been inspired to do into form. And ever since that, I found this to be true. I did bring my book into being, as well as other things that I've been inspired to create and experience. And it was interesting because I would see the connection between allowing myself to receive the information, receive the guidance, and then I was able to act on it. But then I realized that there was one aspect of the process that I wasn't fully connecting with. And I really didn't understand it until much later. And the reason I didn't understand it was, here was my book. I had it in my hand. I had it out in the world. It was for sale in different locations, and it was where people could buy it. But yet there was still something that was missing from me. And what I finally realized it was, and this was really reflecting on when the book was first released, and that was my intention. What was my intention behind writing The Key to Life? Or when we look at the process in total, what is the intention behind any inspiration you've been given? What are you going to do with it? So as I reflected on the time when The Key to Life was first released, which actually was almost 3 years ago, I realized that my intention was more about getting it completed as soon as I could to prove to myself that I could write and publish a book. It was also to prove to those around me, my family, that I could write and publish a book and that I did have something of value to say. I've received great reviews on the book. I was told how impactful the message was. I was told that it brought relief to people who were struggling with their life's purpose or just trying to understand why life was unfolding for them as it did. But there was still something missing. I wasn't sure what it was, so I again went through the process of asking the questions during my morning walk. What resulted during this next period of being immersed in the silence of the dawn was I was inspired to rewrite the book, keeping the wisdom and the message of the original version intact, however, reorganize it so it integrated with new insights I had been given. The intention this time around, however, was to write the book for the purpose of its message being shared around the world to all who were open and receptive to receiving it. That inspiration and that supportive intention comes into being, as I mentioned earlier, with the release of the expanded edition of The Key to Life on April the 4th. I've just described a process that I went through when I was writing The Key to Life. In fact, it's a process that I believe will work for any inspirations that were given. There are 3 specific activities that I want to share with you. And it's my belief that Everyone, anyone who consciously engages in these three activities will live a more joy-filled, satisfying life and will experience their inspirations coming into being, happening around us. The first activity that I want to share with you is awareness. Now, you're probably getting tired of me bringing up awareness. It's been in my previous podcasts. It's in almost everything I write. It's certainly a part of any presentation I might make when I'm speaking to large groups or even in my coaching. But I mention it because awareness is and always will be the key to creating conscious change in our lives. We've got to be aware of what's going on around us and within us to know what we don't want, and more importantly, to know what we do want. We have to be aware of the opportunities that are always present to us so we can choose what will lead us towards the experience of life we want and ourself that we desire. In the case of this podcast, our inspirations are what we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of the inspirations that we have them. We must be aware when we deny our inspirations, the life or the expression that they seek through us. We must be aware of the reasons behind our denying its expression so we can move beyond them and allow our inspirations to be fully expressed. The second activity in our process is the intention behind our inspiration, or being intentional. It's being intentional about it coming into being, yet also allowing it to come into being without our interference. You might question how we can be intentional yet not interfere. Our intention is the desired outcome. However, sometimes, and in fact oftentimes, we get so caught up in the details of how it's going to happen that we interfere to the point that we don't allow the full magnitude of our inspirations to come into being. In other words, we limit our inspirations by thinking we must know every step along the way and that we must do everything ourselves to make it happen. We get in the way. We deny the force behind all creation the opportunity to work through us, to bring the inspiration we have into being. Let's take a look now at intention, or the whole idea of being intentional yet allowing. We often hear the term intention, and we hear it used in a lot of different ways, and it's usually the purpose behind what someone might do or say, or it could be our desired outcome. As an example, if I were asked about my intention, I could reply, my intention is to lose 20 pounds. My intention is to take off more time from work. Or, in another way, it wasn't my intention to hurt him or her with my comments. Well, let's look at intention from a totally different perspective, because it's also been described as an energy field from which all things originate, as in the field of intention, or a field of possibility. Dictionary.com defines intention as focused thought, an act of determining mentally upon some action or result. It is deliberateness. For our purposes here, I'm going to use a definition for intention that takes into consideration several of these meanings. Here's what I believe intention is. Intention is the energetic impulse that, when expressed, begins and sustains the process of coalescing all that is necessary for that which is desired to become manifest. Let me read that one more time. Intention is the energetic impulse that, when expressed, begins and sustains the process of coalescing all that is necessary for that which is desired to become manifest. Now, I think we all know that a thought is energy. It's an energetic impulse, and that energetic impulse is the original thought that begins the process of focusing and defining what it is we desire as our outcome or experience. However, an intention doesn't just begin and end with the original thought. Intention is the sustained thought held throughout the process of bringing that which we desire into our lived reality. Intention is conscious, focused awareness of what we desire. It's active awareness of the process and conscious engagement in the process. As we hold the thought, that is our intention, all that is needed to bring the intention to fruition is provided. This is the coalescing or bringing together of all that is necessary for the inspiration and intention to be experienced. Our intention is the desired outcome or the experience of that which we intend. Now, it's important to note that an intention is only one possible outcome out of infinite potentialities. Therefore, when setting an intention, it's important that we don't limit our experience by setting an intention that is finite. As an example, when I first wrote The Key to Life, my intention was to write the book so I could prove to myself and others that I could do it. This was a very limited and finite intention. Yes, I wanted the book to sell. However, my underlying intention was to get the book done to prove that I could. Now, an important point to bring your attention now is that intentions are not always communicated consciously. And this was the case in the original writing of my book. I thought I wanted to get the book out into the world, but when I really reflected on it after all was said and done, my primary intention was to get it written, to get it done, so I could prove to myself and my family and others that I actually could write a book and that I did have something meaningful to say and to share. The third activity in our process of bringing our inspirations into being is persistence. And we have to be persistent in doing all that we can to bring the inspiration to life. Now, this includes being persistent in our intention. Remember, intention is sustained thought throughout the process. We need to be persistent in this thought, persistent in our intention to bring forth that which we have a desire to experience and express, the inspiration we were given. We need to be persistent in allowing the force behind all creation the space needed to support us. We have to be persistent in being aware of when we're in the way and when we need to get out of the way to allow that force behind all creation the opportunity to do what it's going to do, what it's compelled to do, to support us in bringing this inspiration to being. We have to be persistent in our thoughts and beliefs that what we desire, really what we've been inspired to do, is possible and that we're capable of creating it. We have to be persistent in our trust in the process and our trust in ourselves. We must know that what we've been inspired to do was intended, and because it was intended, all for it to be is and will be provided. So the 3 steps, real quick: awareness, the intention behind our inspiration, the intention behind our getting it out into the world, bringing it into existence, and being persistent, continuing to follow through on the inspiration, follow through with our intention, follow through with allowing it to come into being without getting in the way. Now, I have a quote that I want to share with you that was another one of those thoughts that came to me during one of my early morning walks. And a lot of the information that I get has to do with our life's purpose and how we are to live life and really how everything comes together and how everything is being given to us and done on our behalf. And this was a thought that did have to do with intention. Here it is. We have collectively come to believe and accept that our life's purpose is something specific we are called to do. In truth, life's purpose is the experience and expression of our divine self as we do what we are inspired to do. Now, the reason this is so important is because this is talking about how our life's purpose is our experience and expression of ourself, our divine self, as we do what we are inspired to do. This means following through on our inspirations, making sure that when we receive those inspirations, when we acknowledge them, when we honor and respect them, that our purpose for living is the experience we have as we breathe life into our inspirations, as we bring them into being, as we experience and express them. Follow your inspirations, respect your inspirations, honor your inspirations. They are a soul, S-O-U-L, purpose for being here. I want to thank you for your time today. You have many opportunities towards which you can invest your precious time, and yet you've chosen to spend this time with me. I want you to know it is greatly, greatly appreciated. If you have questions or comments on today's podcast, or you have a topic you would like me to cover in a future podcast, you can email me at jim@prosperitybydesign.com. I look forward to continuing our conversation as we bring more ancient wisdom into our modern world that will change not only our personal lives, but the world as we know it into a more peaceful, more loving, more kind and joy-filled experience for all. Until next time, I'm Jim Phillips, and you've been listening to Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World.